Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. I hope you guys are doing great out there.
It's a wonderful day today.
It is. It is. It's a beautiful day. Looking forward to some cooler weather coming, which should be coming in. But first, we're going to look at some quake activity. And we see that the USGS is listing a 3.8 over west-southwest, just 1 kilometer west-southwest of Pollard, Alabama, right on the line with Florida. We've seen activity there before, and when we saw it before, there was a series of ones that came. I think it was about a year ago, and I remember this. It was just a real curiosity as we are, watching a lot of unusual quake activity, and we still have quakes. There's 3 of them actually up here ongoing over by Sparta, North Carolina. And we have some activity right on the Tennessee-North Carolina border as well. Typical fracking quakes in Oklahoma. A little bit of activity over at the New Madrid, right over there at the Arkansas-Tennessee border. And we do get these quakes heading towards El Paso. Driving through this area, there's tons of fracking going on, tons. There's been activity going up, straight up this way. Now, this is actually how the magma feeds going up towards Yellowstone, which is interesting too. Ultimately underneath the ground there, not that Yellowstone's going to go or anything, but obviously that's one we always watch. And I've been watching a swarm over around Idaho. It seems that it has calmed down a little bit. And we have typical activity going on over in Ridgecrest and what has become typical west of Tonopah in Nevada ever since we had the bigger quake over there. And we have all sorts of activity going along the San Andreas, relatively quiet up through Cascadia. And, obviously we've been watching that one closely. So this is out of Fox 59 News. 4.0 earthquake hits the Florida-Alabama border. So really unusual activity that we're seeing often. And, of course, the storms are another issue as well.
Yeah, there's more things on top of more things.
So we see this from on-demand news. Japan and Korea been hit by the strongest typhoon of 2020. Typhoon Maysak has brought violent storms, heavy downpours, caused a lot of damage. It did a lot of damage to a lot of different things, and this is out of the Siberian Times as we see roofs being, just blown off. That's not good. The container right off the truck and onto a car, unfortunately.
Wow.
Some strong damage.
That's horrible. That looks like a scarf.
Yeah, it's just pulling it straight off. And it actually took a floating dock, a massive floating dock. And this is in Vladivostok. And it rammed the dock into a Russian submarine. So this is at the Russian Pacific Navy base. And so this massive floating dock crashed into a submarine.
That's pretty incredible.
And not only that, but there was a cargo ship that was loaded with 6,000 cattle and 43 crew, and it went down in this typhoon. It is sad, and only one crewman was rescued, and I would say so far, but it's doubtful anybody else will be rescued. So loss of 42 crew and 6,000 cattle.
Oh my gosh, talk about survivor's guilt.
Yeah, very, very sad event. So we get more and more info coming out about how things perhaps are on a shorter cycle than we've been led to believe by science. That's always telling us things happen in millions of years. Everything is so far drawn out, and it's not really the case. Like when we're looking at the Carrington event, which was a solar storm that if it happened today, we would have lost the entire grid. And it turns out, it wasn't unique. Probably going to happen again, and more likely that events like that happen on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah, more and more evidence piling there.
Yeah, it's just, more and more things are coming to light. And last night we were doing, I thought fun because I like history, even though I realize so much of history is not even really accurate. But we were just going through different elections and stuff and looking at different, how the elections went. Most people don't have a clue. Like the Democrats and the Republicans, originally there was a party, the Democratic Republicans. It's the history and the way things happen and how they've developed, unfortunately, is not known by the masses. But anyway, Ignatius Donnelly was an interesting guy who actually ran as vice president. And he wrote a book on Atlantis, and he also perhaps was a little bit of the inspiration for Velikovsky. And of course, Velikovsky was really a very, very impactful person, along with others, in getting us to maybe think outside of the box that we were put in by science, and maybe things are a little different than what we've been taught. So the Monster Carrington event was not unique, probably will happen again. And it might be time to rewrite the history books. It really might be. New research shows that the Carrington event, a monster solar storm that hit Earth 161 years ago this week, it might not be anywhere close to as unique as previously thought. Historical documents from East Asia suggest that Carrington events, plural, have happened many times before and probably will again. On September 1st, 1859, the most ferocious solar storm in recorded history engulfed our planet. That was in recorded history. There's probably been others that have been worse that we don't know about. It was the Carrington event named after British scientist Richard Carrington, who witnessed the flare that started it. The storm rocked the Earth's magnetic field, sparked auroras over Cuba, the Bahamas, and Hawaii even. It actually set fire to telegraph stations and wrote itself into the history books as the biggest solar storm ever. But sometimes history books are wrong, and the Carrington event was not unique, says Hisashi Hayakawa of Japan's Nagoya University, whose recent study of solar storms has uncovered other events of comparable intensity. While the Carrington event has long been considered a once-in-a-century catastrophe, historical observations warn us that this might be something that occurs even more frequently. To generations of space weather forecasters who learned in school that the Carrington event was a one-of-a-kind event, these are very unsettling thoughts. Modern technology is far more vulnerable to solar storms than 19th century telegraphs. Think about GPS, internet, transcontinental power grids that can carry geomagnetic storm surges from coast to coast in a matter of minutes. A modern-day Carrington event could cause widespread power outages along with disruptions to navigation, air travel, banking, all forms of digital communication. Many previous studies of solar superstorms leaned heavily on Western Hemisphere accounts, omitting data from the Eastern Hemisphere. This skewed perceptions of the Carrington event, highlighting its importance while causing other superstorms to be overlooked. A good example is the Great Storm of mid-1770, when extremely bright red auroras blanketed Japan and parts of China. Captain Cook himself saw the display from near Timor Island, south of Indonesia. Hayakawa and colleagues recently found drawings of the instigating sunspot, and it's twice the size of the Carrington event's sunspot group. Paintings, diary entries, and other newfound reports, especially from China, depict some of the lowest latitude auroras ever, spread out over a period of 9 days. So we conclude that the 1770 magnetic storm was comparable to the Carrington event, at least in terms of auroral visibility, wrote Hayakawa and his colleagues in a 2017 Astrophysical Journal letter. Moreover, the duration of the storm activity was much longer than usual. And so Hayakawa's team has delved into the history of other storms as well, examining Japanese diaries, Chinese and Korean government records, archives of the Russian Central Observatory as well, and logbooks from ships at sea, all helping to form a more complete picture of events. They found that superstorms in February of 1872 and in May of 1921 were also comparable to the Carrington event, with similar magnetic amplitudes and widespread auroras. 2 more storms are nipping at the heels as well. The Quebec blackout of March 13th, 1989, and an unnamed storm on September 25th, 1909. We're only a factor of about 2 less intense. And so contextualizing the Carrington event has become a busy niche in space weather research. One team led by Jeff Love at the USGS recently confirmed the near equality of Carrington to the May 1921 superstorm. And Hayakawa's team has unearthed new records of extreme auroras in South America as well. So are we overdue for another one of these? Maybe. In fact, we might have just missed one. In July 2012, interestingly enough, NASA and European spacecraft watched an extreme solar storm erupt from the sun and narrowly miss Earth. If it had hit, we would still be picking up the pieces, announced Daniel Baker of the University of Colorado at NOAA's Space Weather Workshop 2 years later. It might have been stronger than the Carrington event itself. So we better start rewriting those history books, as they have not been too accurate.
And this is some of this stuff we don't even get to learn at all. And then when we do, we find out it's wrong. This keeps happening over and over.
And so, where we are right now and everything, we're in a very, very vulnerable position. And as we know, the government itself has warned us to be ready for 6 months off grid, at least have food and water and preps. And what we have gotten message-wise is, at least double that, and then get self-sufficient as much as possible, have backup heating sources and the like.
Yeah, well, you don't really want to depend on the government, because the food they're going to give you is like poison, kind of.
Well, yeah, we know what's going on. As reports from everybody that we're communicating with is that less and less organic available, and that's part of what we're seeing happen. So, prepare. It never hurts to be ready.
No, it sure doesn't.
So, my friends, as always, thanks for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. Anybody that needs to set up an appointment, reach us at evolutionaryenergyarts at gmail.com or EEARTS at protonmail.com. God bless and namaste.
God bless and namaste.